Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Learn the Fundamentals, Supercharge Your Microsoft Excel Skills. And today we're going to see functions, formatting, and printing. This is part 2 of 6-part Microsoft Excel training series, and thanks to Kevin Frankenfield, who's a Microsoft Office expert, who's provided the webinar today. And we are the Small Business Development Center at the College of New Jersey. My name is Lilian Mauro. I am the Regional Director for the center. And what our center does is provide technical assistance to existing businesses and startups. We have different programs available to you throughout the year. We also offer training. Some of them are low cost, some of them are free. And in addition to that, we have all programs are presented by highly qualified specialists. We do have government representatives, faculty, experience, and knowledgeable business owners and private consultants. As I mentioned to you, our counseling services are available to you at no cost. You can request at any time. And please, you can give us a call, and we will set the one-to-one counseling to you. And all our services are supported by the Small Business Administration, by the State of New Jersey, by the College of New Jersey, also the Mercer County Office of Economic Development, and we do have also partners as RBAC at UCEDC and Rutgers State University. All of our programs are supported by the Office of Mercer County and Economic Development. We do have the support of the County Executive, Brian Hughes, Anthony Cariabelli Jr., who is the Director, and Derek Stewart, who is the Business Advocate.
Hi everyone. This is Darren Stewart, Mercer County Office of Economic Development, along with my Director, Anthony Cariabelli Jr. We field and assist all business-related questions that has to do with businesses that want to start a new business, or any business that are that's already started, and they have any questions as far as like trying to begin their business, like from A to Z, what they need to do, what sort of licenses that they need in order to get their business started. We assist business directly or indirectly through our network of federal, state, and local partnerships. We maintain relationships with the current 12 Mercer County municipalities and their specific departments. Next slide, please. We have business council program with the Small Business Development Center, which Lillian touched on that briefly a few minutes ago. We have new lending partnership with the UCEDC, which is the Union County Economic Development Council, and what they do is they provide us and help with small micro business loans. We have on-the-job training through our Mercer County one-stop facility, which is downtown Trenton, and they're pretty good as far as like assisting folks with jobs and vendors, or should I say, employers that's looking for help as far as finding employment. We also have the Federal Trade Zone program that help with any businesses that want to trade their merchandise, overseas or back and forth to the United States. We have free flight selections, which is something that we have with an organization called Cold Star. And if you need any type of facility, no matter what the size, just give us a call and we can help as far as like try to find a location here in Mercer County in any one of the municipalities. And we have a Mercer County Trade Name Certificate Program as well. Next slide. And as you see, we have on the slide, we have our contact information for our Director, Anthony Cariabelli Jr. We have the address, their telephone number, and Anthony's email address, along with my contact information as well. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to myself or either Anthony by way of telephone call or either emailing us, and we'll be more than happy to help anyone with any type of service that they need. Lenny?
Well, and now let me introduce to you to Kevin Frankenfield, who will lead us to the webinar. Thank you, Kevin.
Well, thank you, Lillian. My name's Kevin Frankenfield. I'm an education consultant. I worked for several training schools, vocational schools, software companies, doing various types of training. My specialty is Microsoft Office, or Office 365. What I would like to do is just review a little bit of what we did last week and go this week. So I need to share my screen. And where do I get that share, or is it my screen still up? So here's Excel. And we basically created this file last week from scratch and saved it. And we're going to continue with it. And one of the files is this actual file that was created from last week so that you could work with it. What we did is we created formulas basically for the total. We were showing you how to add cells together. And when I click on this cell B10 up here in the formula bar, it shows you the formula. I can also go in and click on data, and I can tell it to go in and show the different formulas in the actual. Or if I hold the control key and click the tilde key, the tilde key is left to the 1, it will show you which cells contain formulas and what they are, and what ones contain data. It toggles back and forth, so another control tilde will put the data back to where it is. Another tool you can use is just click on the Home tab, and all the way over here to the right, there's the editing group. And if you click on this command, the Find and Select, you can go down to the option where we can go in and select formulas. And again, it will go in and show you which cells contain formulas. Just click off. If you want to see the formula, it's just Control tilde and Control tilde to return back to the normal view. So we talked about adding cells together. We even created a formula where we multiplied two cells together, and then we also subtracted cells together. Now, if you double click on a cell, it's going to show you what is called the range finder, showing you the formula, color coded, and what cells. Now, you can always use this to correct a formula in case something's wrong. Just hit escape to get out of it. We also did one for the sales, going in there and dividing. We also talked about the order of precedence. Well, hopefully you understood the formulas. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some functions. Instead of sitting down here and then keying in the formula that we see up here, or as I did, I used the point method, we can use a different type of function. So I'm just going to switch over to the Statistics tab, and it's basically the same spreadsheet. I modified it a little bit, and here are the different formulas. Again, if I do the Control tilde, I can see the different formulas in the cell. I'll just do Control tilde again. So what I want to do is I want to delete these formulas, these totals. Instead of doing the long way like I showed you the first time, there are some functions that will allow us to add up a column of numbers or a row of numbers. From the Home tab, if I go over here to the editing group, there's this auto sum. If you click on auto sum, what I did is I selected where I want to place the formula. When I click on auto sum, what it looks for first is a column of numbers. If it finds a column of numbers, it will highlight it. If it doesn't find a column of numbers, it will look for a row of numbers to the left of it. Now, I'm not going to worry about B9 not containing any numbers, and I'll just hit enter. I could go to quarter 2. I want to place the total in C10, and I can click on auto sum. It found the column of numbers above it, and it wants to add them together. So I'll hit enter. Now, when I go to quarter 3 and I hit auto sum, it's not doing what I want to do, because what it found was there is a column of numbers above it, but there's a blank cell. But to the left are numbers, and so it wants to add those. Well, it wants to add the wrong numbers. I just basically ignore what it highlights, and you can go back in and highlight the correct range. Hit enter, and it goes in and corrects the formula. Well, let's look at the formula. Now, I did give you a handout, and on the first page, it talks about formulas, and at the bottom, it talks about equal sum, and it shows you basically the formula up here in the formula bar. What does this mean? Well, we're going to sum up. Sum means add all the cells within this particular parentheses or the arguments. Well, I'm listing a range here. B5 is the beginning of the range, and B9 is the end of the range. Even though there's nothing in B9, it's still adding 0 to it. So it's taking all these numbers and adding them together without me having to create that formula. I'll just hit escape. Instead of me going in and adding up each column individually, I showed last week how you can use the autofill handle. That's the little square down in the lower right-hand corner. You move your mouse pointer over it, and it turns into a black plus sign. Click on it and just drag it to the right, and you can see how it's going to go in and total each column. So if I look at the first one, this is a formula. So when you copy a formula to another cell, it changes the values up here in the formula. So if I copy it to the right one cell, all of these cell references in the formula change one cell to the right. So we're looking at this, we're seeing that it's adding up B5 through B9. I'll just hit escape. When I click on the second one, because I moved it one cell to the right, take notice now how it changed the formula without me having to rewrite it to go in and change it one cell to the right. I could also go in and click on cell F5. I'll use the auto sum again, so I'll go over here, click on auto sum, and because it found numbers to the left of it and not a column of numbers, it wants to add those. So all I have to do is hit enter. Once I hit enter, all I have to do now is copy this formula down. So I'll go to the lower right-hand corner, get the black plus, and just drag it down. Now, because I'm moving the formula down one row, if I look at the formula up here, B5 through E5, I move it down one row, it's going to change it one row. So it'll be B6 to E6. And I'll just click on the next formula below it so that you can see how it automatically just changes the cell references in a formula when you go to copy it. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but it's can also be a problem. Now, if I clicked on this cell where it says F5 divided by F10, and I decided that I wanted to copy that down, it's going to give me errors. Why is it giving me errors? Well, the first one is saying, let's take F5 times F10. So I'll just double click on it so you can see where the two numbers are coming from. Now, when I move it down one cell, it wants to move the cell references down one cell. So when I go down to the next one, take notice how it wants to divide by a blank cell or dividing by 0. We can't divide by 0, it gives an error. I'll just hit escape and I'll just undo those formulas to bring it back in. We're going to be talking about absolute cell referencing a little while after functions. So the first function I showed you was this auto sum, going in and adding up a column of numbers. If you look at the handout, it talks about how you can add up different cells as well as ranges in cells by adding commas and different ones. If you go to auto sum and click on it, it's going to automatically do the auto sum. I'm just going to quickly delete these numbers again. Now, what I generally do is I do a shortcut on the keyboard. There's the Alt key and the equal key. If you press them together, it actually does the same thing as pressing the auto sum, which is up here. Take notice it found the numbers, column of numbers, so I'll hit enter. And then I can just go back, click on the cell, use that autofill handle and drag it to the right to fill in the sum. To do the average, I'll just highlight these numbers. And I mentioned last week down here on the status bar that here you can see the sum, you can see the average, and you can go in here and right click on this status bar and put check marks. You might want to do what is the min and max if you're working with some statistics and even count. So you just put a check mark in there, click off, and take notice now when I highlight numbers, down below it tells me what the average is, how many cells contain numbers, the numeric count, the minimum number in the range, the maximum number of the range, and the sum. Well, we have functions that do this. I don't have to write a formula where I'm going to go into average and tell it, hey, add these cells and then divide it by the count. There is an average function. If I go back up to where it says auto sum, there's a drop down, and the drop down contains other functions, statistical functions. If it's not listed there, you can always click on more functions, but instead of doing the extra clicks, this button here on the formula bar is the same as clicking more functions from here. And I'll show you that in a little bit later. So this time I'm going to click on average. So I click on the cell where I want to place the formula, click on average, and now it's highlighting the wrong cells. I'm not going to get worried about that. I'm just going to go in and click on the right cells. Now that I'm seeing that it's going to average everything between B5 and B8, which is a range because it's B5 semicolon or colon B8, that stands for a range, I can hit enter. Now when I highlight these and I look down here, the average is going to be 120,250. And when I go up here, it gives me the correct answer. Now I could do that for each quarter, but since they're all next to each other, and if I double click on this, it's showing average. So if I move these over, I can do each column by doing the autofill. And there's my average for the 4 quarters. I also want to find what is the largest number in here. I can look in here and like, oh, 123,000 is the largest number. Well, if this is a large column of numbers, it's going to be rather tedious to find the largest. So what we can do is we can find the largest by using what is called the max function. I'm going to click where I want the max, which is B13. I'm going to go over here to the auto sum, click on the drop down, and I'm going to select max. Again, just like it did with the average, it's highlighting the wrong range of numbers. So I'll select the correct range. I'll hit enter, and now it's telling me that 123,000 is the largest number in this range. If I look down here at the status bar, it's showing here that it's going to be 123,000. I was clicking on the minimum, which is the smallest number. Again, because these are columns, when I go to copy this over, it will change the formulas. So if I double click on C13, take notice how it is now looking for the largest number in the C5 through C8. So the max is to find the largest number. The min is to go in and find the smallest number. And I'm looking here because it's only 4 numbers. We know it's 117. If this was, again, like a large range, it would be rather tedious to go in and find the smallest number within the range. Again, I click where I want the formula. I'm going to go back over here to the auto sum and click on the drop down and select the minimum. Now you can also type in these formulas if you know the syntax, but I find it's easier when you're learning just to go over here to auto sum and click on the drop down. Well, again, it's selecting the wrong numbers, so I got to highlight the correct range. It's changing it to B5 to B8, so I'll hit enter, and then I can copy these over. Now, if I highlight this range, I look down here at the status bar and it shows you that the minimum is 117,000. Also, if I double-clicked on cell B18, take notice how it changed the formula from the first cell that's in B14. So it reads C5 through C8. And that's one thing when you're learning about copying formulas, that the cell references change the amount of cells that you move. So if you copy it over 2 cells, it's going to change the formula by 2 cells. If you move it down 3 rows, it changes the formula by 3 rows. If you go over 2 columns and then down 2 rows, it changes the formula 2 columns and 2 rows. That's the main thing you need, and this is called relative formatting. I'm going to save my work, and I'm actually going to open up another file. There is something unique about the auto sum that you can't do with the other functions. And some of you may have learned this way of doing it. It's correct for doing it for auto sum, but it doesn't work for the other functions, and that's why I was going through selecting the cell first. I'm just going to go back here and open up another file called first quarter recycling. Here I see a group of numbers, and I see that they want the totals here in column E and in row 15. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the numbers plus the blank cells where the totals are going to be. To quickly do a sum for all of them, all I have to do is click on auto sum and it automatically appears. Now this only works for auto sum and not the other functions. For average, I would still have to click on F5, F2, go up here to auto sum, click on average, and then highlight the right cells. I don't want to bring the total into the average, so I had to make sure that wasn't selected. Highlight it. Now, instead of clicking and dragging this down, this autofill handle, when you're going to be in a column and going down rows, if you double click this black plus sign, it knows to fill out the rest of the numbers going down this column, and it knows to stop here at the last entry. I'll just do a Control Z again. So I did the average, and all you have to do is go to the little black handle, double click on it, and fill it down to get the rest of the formulas in there. Can I do that going across? If I deleted these, no, I can't. If you double click, nothing happens. It only goes down a column and not across rows. Across rows, you still got to drag it to get your totals. I'll just do a Control Save there. And I just want to show you that function because some of you will probably learn auto function where you highlighted the cells and the blank cell to get the sum. Excel is smart enough to do it, but I want to show you that for all the other functions, you have to click where you want to put the formula. So I'll just close this particular file. I'll save it by doing a Control S, and a Control W on your keyboard will close the window. It'll ask you, do you want to save your changes? I'll just click Save. So now I'm back here at my spreadsheet. I'm going to open up another spreadsheet, and if you have the handout, it shows you what files I'm actually working with. I'm going to open up another one, File, and I have already opened them, so they're listed here. And what I'm looking for is one called Internet Providers. And if I don't see it here, I'll just go back to this PC, and I need to go into my files to find Internet Providers. Here it is. In this screen, Because I have not created this file, I am in what is called protected view. This is in read only at this point. So if I clicked on the menus, they're all grayed out. In order for me to edit a file that somebody else created, I got to click on enable editing, and then everything will come back. Well, here is our internet providers. They want to know what the average price is for this group here. Now, I'm not going to worry that there are blank cells. I want to make sure that I know the average for this range, which is C4 through C18. Because I'm not using sum, I have to click where I want the average price. I'll go to auto sum here, click on average, and highlight the correct range, hit enter. The highest price, well, that was going to be the max that I showed you earlier. So I'll just click on auto sum, click on max, and again, highlight the same range, hit enter. Now, if I go in and change something, well, I'm going to go into Barnstormer. I'm going to add a price of 77 and 76 cents. When I hit enter, the average price has changed and the highest price is now 77.76. Well, I want to know how many blank cells there are. There is something called count, but count doesn't work here. I'm actually going to put count above here. If you would go over here and click on count numbers and select this range, it will tell me the number of cells that contain numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's not telling me how many are unknown prices. So count will be counting the number of cells that contain numbers. If it contains text, it isn't included in the count, but there's a count A that will allow you to count text. Well, I just wanted to show you that function. Well, how can I go in and count the empty cells? Well, if I go to AutoSum, there isn't anything here. I can click on more functions here, or I can click on insert function, which is here. Either way is fine. When I click on insert function, it brings up this dialog box, insert function. You can see up here, it says type in a brief description. So I'm going to say count the number of empty cells. So you type what you're looking for, hit enter, and it'll try to find all the functions that will think it needs. Well, here it's saying count A. This counts the number of cells within a range that are not empty. That's different than the count that I did earlier. Count blank, if I click on it and I read it down below, it says counts the number of empty cells in a specific range of cells. That sounds like what I want. So I'll just click OK here. And it's asking me, what is the range? You don't have to do anything fancy. All you have to do is highlight the range. Now that I highlighted the range, it shows me the numbers and it tells me the count. Hit enter, just click OK. And now I have 5 unknown prices. If I go back and say, oh, let's delete that Barnstormer, when I do it, it recalculates the average, the highest price, and unknown prices. When you have a large spreadsheet, sometimes we have to force calculations to go on. You can turn auto calculating off. And if you turn auto calculating off, how you can get the spreadsheet to calculate is on the function keys all at the way at the top. There's F1 through F12. F9 is recalculate. So if you press F9 after you make some changes, it will recalculate the whole worksheet. Well, I'm going to save this particular file, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to close it. So those are working with certain functions. I'm going to go back to forecast. Last week, when I did this variable cost, I created this formula that took the total from Q1 and multiplied it by 22. Now, as I said, if you copy the formula by using the autofill handle, this formula up here, if I go right, changes one cell to the right. So it would be B10 times, or C10 times B16. Well, if you look here, there's nothing in B16. What I'm going to do is I'll just click on there and drag this over just to show you, whoa, something happened here with my numbers. So I go back to the first formula, formula is correct. When I click on the second formula, I look at it up here, but if I want to get a graphic of it, I'll double click. Take notice how it's taking B or C10 times B16. I'll just hit escape. The same thing happened when I copied it over to D. Remember, it's going to change it 2 cells from the original. So this would be D10 times C16. Wait a minute. Does that mean I have to go in and recreate those formulas for each time? No, there is something called absolute cell referencing. And what I'll do is I'll just delete those out of there. Absolute cell referencing means that when I copy the formula, I don't want a cell to change. Well, with this formula, if I did copy it over, let's look at the first part of it. I do want to take the totals, which are one cell to the right. So B10 would become C10, D10, or E10. So that's okay. I want them to change. I do not want A16 to change. So I'm just highlighting it. Now, if you are in a formula, if you press the F4 key, it will put $signs in front of the column letter and the column number. If you press the F4 again, it will go in and put a $sign in front of the row number. A third time, it puts it in front of the column number, and the fourth time, it removes it. Well, if you don't want the cell to change in the formula, when I copy it over, A16 does not change. It's staying in A16. So I put the double. I could also type these $signs in, but I use the F4 to toggle through it. So I'll hit enter. And when I hit enter, I'm now going to go in and drag this across. And now there's my new formula. So I click on the first one, I'll double click, it's showing us B1 times C16. Let's click on the second one. Take notice, because I made this absolute, that it moved the B10 to C10, but A16 stayed because of the $signs. $sign in front of the column number or column letter and row number means that that cell does not move. If you have a $sign in front of column A, it means that it stays in column A, but the row number can change if you don't. And I have this in the handout explaining how this would work. If you have just a $sign in front of the row number, it means that the column can change from A to B, but stays in row 16. So you have to play around with it a little bit to understand what an absolute is. And once you do it once or twice, you start figuring out, oh, this makes it a lot easier than having to create that formula 4 different times. I'm going to show you another one where I can use an absolute. I'm going to be opening up a mileage reimbursement. So I'll go back here to open, and let's see if I have opened it. Nope, I'll just go back to open PC. And it's the mileage reimbursement worksheet, which is available for you to download if you follow the handout. Here, I want to create a calculation that's going to take the person's miles times this B1 or this 50.5 cents. So I'll click in C10 and I'll start my formula. As I stated in the first class, formulas always start with equals. So I'm going to take the 67, I'm going to multiply it by the 0.505. I'll hit enter. Now I should have made it absolute because when I drag it down, let's look at the formula. B4 will become B5, C5, C5, C6, or B. It'll be B5, B6, B7, and B8. But the B1 will become B2, B3, B4. So I'll just double click on it to drag it down and take notice we got some rather strange answers. And if you look at Louise, she's actually driving 4 miles and getting $196. Hey, I would like to be Louise. But because I copied the formula down, she's getting $49 per mile. Now, if you look at David, David's getting $4,891 for driving 31 miles, but he's also getting paid $67 per mile. Wait a minute, that's not correct. So let's go back to the original formula. We know that B1 contains the mileage rate. So in the formula, I got to click on B1. I'm going to do the absolute by pressing the F4. Again, I can type the dollar signs in. I'll hit enter. It really doesn't change the formula. But now when I copy the formula down, I get more realistic numbers. Louise, instead of getting the $49, if I click on her, she's now getting the 50.5 cents. So is David. So that's working with absolute. And this is something that's very important. It's probably the hardest concept to learn when you're creating formulas, but it is a time saver once you learn it. And again, if you look on the second page of the handout that I gave you, it would explain, it shows a formula, then I show the formula if it copies right or if it copies down, and I'm showing the different types of absolutes. No absolute, an absolute for the column and the row, then an absolute for a column, and then an absolute for the row. So I'll just save this, do a Control S, and I'll do a file close to close out of this. So those are the functions I wanted to go over. It was basically with the auto sum, we should understand now what a sum is, what an average is. We did a count, we did a max, we did a min, and more functions where you can go in and look for a function. There's over 300 functions here. I don't expect everybody to remember every one of them. You know the ones that you work with, but sometimes you need to find one. So you just type what you're looking for. You can either click go or hit enter, and it should show you functions that will work with what you typed. I'll just click on cancel to close that out. I'm looking at my spreadsheet, and now what I would like to do is I understand how to create it. I want to make it look a little bit more professional. So this is where formatting comes in. Now let us look at the spreadsheet. Take notice the numbers I typed in do not contain any commas. They don't contain any dollar signs. You don't type those in, you format them in. So what I would like to do is I would like to make this look a little bit more professional. I could go in here and click on the ABC sales, which is A1 and A2, and I would like to center that. Well, one way I could try to center that is just clicking on the border and dragging it either to C or D. It kind of looks centered, but I take notice that they're also left aligned. I'm not thrilled with that, so I'm going to go up here to undo to send it back over to A1 and A2. I see people sometimes go in and click on A1. They want to go over to G2. They want to take these two rows and center them across this selection. So they go to home, they go to alignment, and they click on this merge and center. Gives you some warning. You click on it, it's like, whoa, that's not what I wanted. What happened to my second line? So I'll just undo what I just did. How I generally go in is I want to center across selection, and I'm doing more than one row. I don't want to have to click on just ABC sales and say merge and center, and also do it for forecast sales. That's too much clicking. What I'll do is I'll just undo these two. I want to do these two rows at the same time, and I want to center them over those columns. So I highlight the rows and the columns I want to center them in. Instead of clicking on center and merge, in the alignment tab, I'm going to go here to this dialog box launcher. When I click on it, it brings up format numbers. So I'm going to go in here and say we're text alignment, horizontal, and it says general. Drop down, there is center. I don't choose that center. It centers it in the cell. I choose this option second from the bottom, center across selection. Click on that, click OK, and take notice now how they're not left aligned. They're actually centered in across those columns. I want to make it look a little more professional. So I'm going to go in and format the cells. So from the home ribbon over here under styles, I'm going to click on format cells. It gives us a gallery. Here are different styles. You go over it, you can click on it, and it's like, oh, let's choose accent 1. You could choose whichever one you want. So I'll click on accent 1 and take notice how it formats those cells without me having to go in and select the cell background and the color of the font. I'm looking at the size of this, and if you go over here to font, these are still highlighted. It's doing Calibri. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Arial Black, and I want to make it a little bit larger. I'm going to make them size 16 so that the title of this is a little bit larger. So what I did is I changed the fonts and I changed the font size. I'm going to click on cell B1 because that's where I think ABC Sales Company starts. I'm clicking on all these and looking at the formula bar, and I'm noticing there's nothing in here. When you do this center across selection, they're in the first cell. So A1 and A2. So I could go in here and say, oh, I want to edit this. I just want to say ABC Company. So I'm highlighting sales and deleting it and just hit enter. And it's now updating the ABC Company sales forecast. What I want to do next is I want to make these quarters and totals and maybe the percentage of sales look a little fancier. I could make them look bold. I could even go in and change their font color, say that I want the dark blue. But I want to do something a little bit different with them. What I want to do is I want to put these quarters on an angle. To do that, I'm going to go back to the same place I did when I centered across selection. I highlight the cells first. The key is always highlight what you want to format. You can't select format and then go in and select the cells. It's always select the cells first, then format. I'm going to go to alignment, and we're back here. Here's where we saw where we could go in and center across selection. But over here under orientation, you can click on the degrees. If I want it 15 degrees, just click on it and we'll make it 15 degrees. Or you can use the spin box to say how many degrees you would like to rotate something. I'm going to make it 30 degrees. When I click OK, take notice now how I rotated the text inside those cells. Now I can also go over here, go to cell styles, and I'm going to say that I want to change it to accent 60. So I did that, and I can still make them bold. What I would like to do next is I want to indent the sales regions. Sales is up here telling us what this is, but I want to indent the sales regions. One way of indenting is highlight the cells. I could come over here to alignment And right now, here it is left aligned. Nothing happens. I could say, oh, let's center it. So I see it centered, but when I look at the left side, it's jagged. Or I could say right aligned. None of them are what I want. I do want it left aligned because I want a straight line. But next to the alignment, we have where we can increase or decrease the indent. So if I click on increase indent, take notice how it takes the text and puts some space between the cell wall without me having to type the spaces. Well, what I would like to do is just make it look a little bit more professional. I'm going to go in and I'm going to make the text by clicking on this and making it dark blue. I'll make it bold as well. I want to change the background color. I'm not going to use the cell style this time, but to change the cell color, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on maybe this light green or select one of these other greens just so it looks a little bit different. There I created basically my own style. Well, if I want to apply this maybe to fixed in a variable or even to net, I could either create a style or use the format painter. Well, I'm going to show you how to create a style. If you highlight a cell and it's formatted a certain way, to create a style, we'll go back over to styles, go down to click on cell styles, and we're going to create a new cell style. So I'll click on new cell style. I got to give the cell style a name. I'll call it my labels. It's telling us here it's how it's formatted. I'll click OK. Now I have a new style here up here under custom called my labels. So if I highlight it fixed and variable, I can come over to cell styles, click on my labels, and I can go to net here and I can click on that. So I can create a style based on information that I have formatted and then use it for other parts of the worksheet. Well, I'm looking at sales here, and what I would like to do is go in and I'll select, well, that's the font color. What I want to do is I want to select one of these blue colors. I'm trying to find out, there's one that matches. I'll make it bold and I'm going to make it italicized. Now I'm not going to make a style for that one, but I want to apply this format to costs as well as revenue. So I'll highlight the cell and I'll click Format Painter once. Format Painter takes the formatting of a cell and will format other cells that you highlight with the same format. But when you click it once, I'll click it once, it's depressed or it's selected. And now when I click on a cell, it takes on the same formatting. But now I would have to, if I want to do revenue, I would have to go back up here to sales or costs and redo the format painter. I'm actually going to undo this. So clicking once on the format painter allows you to format a cell or group of cells, if you select a group of cells, just one time. If you double click the format painter, I can go down here and click on costs. I can click, whoops, I got to go back up here to sales. Double click on format painter, click on cost. I still have the paintbrush next to my mouth, so I can click on revenue. And I can click on other cells to format them the same way. When you double click, when you're done, you have to turn it off by clicking on the format painter. I want to format the numbers. I want the first row to contain comma, dollar signs, and decimal places. So I'm going to highlight B5 through F5. I'm not going to worry about the percentage of sales. To format numbers, I can either go over here, click on this accounting, and select that I want English with a dollar sign. If I did that, it goes in and adds the $, as well as the comma and the decimal places. If you want it, I'm just going to do a Control Z. If you wanted more control over how you're going to format these numbers, instead of clicking on the $, go down here to number and click on the dialog box launcher, and here's your number. Now you can click on currency or you can click on accounting. I'm going to click on currency. So what does it want to do? It's showing me an example of what it does. How many decimal places do I want? Maybe I don't want any decimal places, so I can go back down to 0. Do I want a $? Do I want a £? What is the currency you're working with? Now, if it was a negative number, how would the negative number appear? With a minus in front of it, in red, in parentheses, or in red in parentheses? I'm just going to leave it at the default and click OK. And now I formatted it without decimal places. Oh, I wanted decimal places. Well, I can go back up here to number, and we have here increase decimal place or decrease. So if I click this twice, I can add 2 decimal places. Usually, if you use the dialog box launcher, use it for the rest of the numbers because it can put them, misalign the numbers. And I'll show you an example. I'll highlight these numbers, and I don't want a $, in front of them because it gets too cluttered if you have $, but I want to put commas in there. Uh-oh, something happened here. What does that £? Mean? You didn't do anything wrong. It just means that the columns are too small to display the formatted number. How can I correct that? One way of correcting that is this is column B through F. So I'm going to go up here to the column headings. I'll select them and drag that across. Now I could double click to open each column to the widest selection. I'll just undo that. Or you can right click on one of the selected column headings and say column width. I want to open up the columns. Here it's telling you it's 10.77. I want to open these up to 15. So I'll just type in 15. And now it opened them up to 15, which is larger than to the widest entry in here. But if you look at what I just did, look at these numbers. They're not aligning correctly. Well, why? Well, the first row, I actually went to the dialog box launcher and choose currency. The second time I did it from number. So I'll just do a Control Z twice. As I said, because I did this from the dialog box launcher, I got to click on the dialog box launcher. I'll select currency. I'm going to keep it 2 decimal places because I added them anyway. But I do not want the symbol. So I'm going to say none. Click OK. And take notice now how the numbers are lining up by the decimal places. So if you use the numbers or the $ up here, you can use the comma here. But if you go to the dialog box launcher for the $, you got to go to the dialog box launcher for the rest of them to get them to align correctly. Here again, I can go in and select this particular $. And what I want to do is I want to do all the totals that way. We know that if we click once, I can only select one range of cells, but if we double click, I can do multiple. So I can select the total here. I can select the total here, as well as here to put the $. I'm done, so I turn them off. Now I have this range to format with commas, so I'll just click on one with a comma. I'm only going to click once because I don't have to format other numbers, and I just select the range. There it is, it's all formatted the same way. Again, I want to widen the columns, so I'm going to highlight columns B through F, right click, and I'm going to do the column width and set it to 15. I'm going to right click on column A, and I'm going to select the column width of 12. And as you can see, I can adjust columns that way. You can also go in between and drag. Not only can you adjust the column width, you can also adjust the row height. So I'm going to highlight 5 through 8. I'm over here on the row numbers. I'll right click on one of the selected and I'll say row height. So it's showing you at 14. I'm going to open them up to 25. And now there are my columns. Now you can also go in and adjust them just like you can a column heading. What I would like to do next is I see that everything here is now aligned at the bottom of the cell. We know this will align vertically or horizontally. Here's where you can align vertically. So align top of the cell, align center of the cell, or align bottom. I'm going to tell it the center. These, I need to go back in and just change that to go back or indent that. So now we're formatting numbers. So that's what the number is for. So if we looked at the alignment, we should be comfortable with aligning text, aligning vertically, merge and center. Wrap text is to wrap text in a cell so it doesn't go into another cell. And the numbers, we should see here that we have the $sign, the comma. And if I do the percentage of sales, I can go in here and say, show this as a percentage instead of a decimal. So I'm formatting the numbers. I can also go in here and I want to go and select these totals. So take notice, I'm holding the control key down as I select the different ranges. I'm going to go back over here to cell styles and I'm going to choose accent 40. Take notice I formatted all 3 ranges the same way. I want to make this look a little bit more professional, so I'm going to highlight the numbers. I can say cell styles, and I could choose this accent 20. Take notice how it went in and highlighted and made the background of the cells a lighter color. Well, what I would like to do is I would like to put lines down each row. So what we can do is we can create what are called borders. Over here is your font tool. And I could go in there and say, oh, let's add left border. So when I click on left border, and then when I click off, I get this left border to the left of everything that was selected. It's not what I wanted to do. What I want to do is I want to put a left border on each column. Well, if I click here on the border tool again, I'm trying to find one where I can put the left border and I'm not seeing it. So I'm going to go down here to more borders and it brings up this format cells. We saw this earlier. We saw it for number, we saw it for alignment, and now here's border. What I would like to do is put a border on the left of the text. So your line style will ask us what type of border do you want. So I'll click on that border and you click where you want to place them. I could even go in and change the border color by making it dark blue. I'll just re-click on them and it changes them to dark blue. Well, what if I accidentally clicked at the top here? Well, I don't want the top border to be blue. Just click on it a second time and it removes the color or removes the border. When I click OK, take notice how it puts the borders to the left on each column. I also want to go in and I want to put a double border above the totals. So I'm selecting the 3 ranges. To put the double border, I'm going to go back to the border tool and I'm going to select this bottom double border. Now when I click off, you can see that there's a double border above all the numbers. Well, I selected the wrong area over here, but I could always fix that. I can go back in here, go back to my border tool, say I don't want no border, and I can highlight above the numbers, and again, select bottom double border. So that's how you can correct this. You can even turn off the grid lines by going to the View tab, and once I'm in View, I can uncheck grid lines. When you uncheck grid lines, the borders show up a little bit better. Well, how do I get the grid lines back? Well, just put a check mark in grid lines and they reappear. So here we went in and formatted our numbers. So I'll just save this file. I'm going to either do Control S or click on Save, or you can do a File Save to save your changes. So what we did is we went in and formatted to make this look a little bit more professional. Now, if I wanted to print this particular file, you could do a file print, and it prints the current worksheet. You can either hit the escape or the back button to get back to your spreadsheet. Now take notice, if you do a Control P on your keyboard, it's not for paste, but it's for print, it shows you the worksheet. Hit escape to get back. Well, what if I only wanted to print the top part of this spreadsheet from A1 to G10? Well, if I do a Control P here, it's printing the whole worksheet. What I need to do is I need to tell it just to print that part of the worksheet. So I'm going to click on Page Layout, and I'm going to go down here to Print Area and Page Setup. Click on the drop-down and say Set Print Area. You'll see that it puts a box around it, and when I do Control P, it's going in there, and it's now printing what I selected. I want to return back to printing the whole sheet. So I'm going to go Page Layout, Page Setup, Print Area, and clear the print area. Now when I do Control P, it prints it. You can only print one sheet at a time unless you do something called grouping. In the next class, I'm going to be talking about grouping in more detail. What is grouping? Well, I want to print it out the forecast and the statistics. How can I do that? Well, if I do the Control P, it prints only one worksheet. You could come in here and say, print the entire workbook. And there I have 3 pages. Or you can do what is called grouping. What I'm going to do is forecast is selected, so I'm going to hold the Control key down and press statistics. Both of these sheets down here are selected. Also, if you look at the title up here, you'll see that it says group here. That means something. That means I'm working in 2 sheets. I'm going to go in more detail in the next class with grouping, especially with like formulas and formatting. Now, if I do a Control P, I don't have to go in there and say print the entire sheet. But what I can do is I can click through there and I'm saying, oops, I'm noticing something here on page 2. Well, how can I get the rest of page 2 in here? One way is change the orientation to landscaped. Now I only have 2 pages, worksheet 1 and worksheet 2. I could also do other options as well, but I want to show you that you can get things to print on one worksheet. I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to open up another file. I'm going to do File, Open, and I'm going to open up something called the Customer Contact List. This is a larger file. I want to print this file, so I do a Control P, and I'm starting to see parts of the files. This is 4 pages, so I'll go to page 2, page 3, page 4. Hey, that looks pretty good. I can also go in and let's say I want to see where the page breaks are. Down here on the status bar, next to the zoom, this is your page break view. When you click on the page break view, it shows you how your pages are going to print, what's going to be on page 1, page 2, page 3. In an older version of Excel, there would be actually 6 pages with 2 lines at the bottom on page 3. You can take these and move these different page breaks to print your pages differently. So if I wanted to go down here and add these 2 rows to that page, it will put those on page 1. If I wanted to include this column, you can move the solid lines as well. Or if I didn't want to include the dates, I can hide the dates by dragging that over. Now when I do a Control P, I can see the 4 different pages. How a page prints. It'll start with page 1 and it'll go down the columns. Once it gets to the bottom of the columns, it goes over to the next set of columns and goes down. And you can change the print order to say that this is page 1 and this is page 2. What I would like to do is if I do the Control P, notice that page 1 has headings. It's telling me it's the customer ID. Page 2 does not have it. Page 3, which starts the next columns, shows it, but page 4 doesn't have column headings. I want to see the column headings at the top of each page. To do that, you can either click on Page Setup or go to Print Titles. Either way will get you to the correct place. It says here, we're printing sheet 1. What sheets do I need to print? Well, I'm going to click here where it says rows to repeat at top. Well, just click any place in row 1. Puts a $ row 1. It says repeat row 1 at the top of each page. You can click print preview here or click OK. I'll click on print preview. Look at page 1. Nothing changed, but when I go to page 2, I now have print titles. I'll go to page 3, which is the next section over, and page 4 has print titles. But if I go back to page 1, I have a company name here, or page 2. When I go to page 3, I lose the company name. Is it possible to print a column on each page? The answer is yes. Again, you either go to Page Setup, click on the dialog box launcher, or click on Print Titles. It brings you back. Now there is an option right underneath rows to repeat at top that say repeat at left. Click in there, and I want column B to be that. So click OK. Now when I do a Control P, I'm looking at page 1 and page 2. I don't see any changes in it, but when I go to page 3, take notice now the company name is appearing. That's on page 1 and 2, and it's now on 3 and 4. So that's how you can get columns to repeat on other pages. I want to send this report out to people. So what I would like to do is put headers and footers on there. So we can go in, click on Page Setup. Page Setup page, I'll just go over some of this. Whether we want to print landscaped or portrait, I showed you that in Print Preview. You can also try to tell it to print all on one page. Well, I'll click Cancel here and do a Control P. And if you go down, print one side at collated landscape, the size, your margins, but your custom scaling, let's tell it to fit all columns on one page. And when you do, it makes this a really small, and it's hard to read. I could also say, fit all on one page. Would you want to receive that? I know I wouldn't. So you have these different options. I'll say no scaling to get back to where we were. Oh, I'm to 9 pages. Why am I to 9 pages? Well, I'll go back to Print Preview, And if you look at the dotted lines, here's page 1. Where the dotted line starts and the solid line is page 2. Well, I want to bring this up. So now that I have a total of, and I'm going to bring this one down, so I have a total of 4 pages instead of the 9. And it's just playing with that page break. Remember, I'm in page break view. To get back to normal view, just click on normal down here. And I'm going to go back to page break. I want to go in and make this look a little bit more professional. So I'll go back to the page setup, click on the dialog box launcher. Here's where you can make margins. You can center on a page. I'll show that a little bit later, but you can add headers and footers. Headers go above the document, footers go below the document and get printed on every page unless you tell it to print differently on the first page. I'm going to click on custom header, and here are different icons. This icon is to format text. This is the number, what page it is, the total number of pages, the date, the time, the file path of where it can be found, the file name, or the sheet name. You can also add pictures. Well, in the center here, I want to say that this is the customer contact list. So I'm just typing text, customer contacts. If you highlight customer contacts and go to the A, I can say make that bold. Over here, I'm going to type in to the right side that this was prepared by, and I'm just going to type in Kevin. I'll click OK, click OK again. Now when I do a print preview, I have a header at the top of each page, customer contacts prepared by Kevin, when I go to all 4 pages. I can also add information to the footer. So I'll click on the dialog box launcher, header and footer, custom footer. Well, I want to go in there and put, what is the name of the file? So I'll say insert file name. I also want to know the number of pages. So I can type in the word page, put a space, and type in the page number. They'll put a placeholder in there. Well, this is page 1 of, and then the total number of pages. And on the right side, I'm going to put the date that I have printed this. So I'll just click OK here. I'll do a print preview and take notice how I have customer contacts. I have the customer contact list, the name of the file, what page number it is, and as I go to each page, changes. Generally, we don't want headers or footers on the first page. So I'll go back here to the page layout setup, go to header and footer, and I'm going to say different first page. I'll click OK, and when I do a print preview, the first page does not have a header or footer, but the remaining pages do. Now, I also mentioned that you can change the direction of how it's going to print. So we have margins, we have header and footer, and we have sheet. Sheet, we worked with rows on top. You can also tell it to print grid lines. It generally doesn't print grid lines when you print it out, but you can include grid lines or even notes. But down here's the page order. Here's where it tells us that we're going to go down page 1, page 2. Here's page 1, page 2, then page 3, page 4. If you wanted this to be page 1 and page 2, then you got to say over, then down, and it switches the order. Just click OK. I'm just putting it back to the way it was. I'm just going to do a Control S to save this file, and I'm going to close it. I want to print this information again, so I'm just highlighting it, and I'm going to ungroup this. I've got to right-click and ungroup the sheets because I only want the forecast where I want this. I can't print, or I can't go in and select a range on a grouped set of sheets. I'll go to print area. We selected the print area, and I'll do Control P, and here's how it prints. Now, another way you can get to this page setup dialog box is down here is page setup. What I want to show you was with margins. I want to center this in the page. So I could click on horizontal and vertical. And when I click OK, take notice how it centers my information on the page. This is basically concluding our section. So we talked about functions. We talked about absolute formulas, as well as formatting and printing your worksheets. So now you should be able to make a professional looking worksheet and even print one to distribute to people. Again, if you wanted to send a file to somebody that you just created, you can always go to File, and you can go down to Share, Email. Do you want to send it as an attachment or as a PDF? I'll send this as a PDF. And I'll bring up what do I want on there? Do I want the entire workbook? No, I just want the forecast sheet. I'll convert this to PDF, and it will open up my PDF as well as Outlook. And with Outlook, it will create an email with the attachment, and I don't have to send it to anybody else. So you can email directly through the application by doing a share email. I'll do this as an attachment. And now here is the Excel as an attachment. All I have to do is address it to whoever I need to address it to. Any questions with what I went over?
There appear to be no questions at this time.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching, and I guess we go back to Lillian.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for this great presentation. Really was good to know more about the formulas and functions. And thank you. I think it was very good, and hopefully it helped us to be better at the moment that we need to present our files in Excel. Thank you, Kevin. And also would like to invite us for our next event. The next upcoming event is going to be on August 27 about strategies to sustain a profitable Black-owned business. It's going to be also from 11 to 12:30. Please, you will receive an email with the video recording of this event, and then also the registration for the link to register for the next event. And also, don't forget, we have the next part 3 of the 6-part Microsoft Excel training series on September 1st at the same time, 9:30 to 11. You're going to learn more about calculations across worksheets and workbooks, and also grouping. If you would like to request additional assistance or one-to-one counseling with Kevin or any other counselor, please contact our offices at 908-295-5926, or also send us an email at regionaldirector@sbdcnj.com. You may also reach the Office of Mercer County of Economic Development at 609-989-6555, or send an email to acarabellijr@mercercounty.org. Thank you very much for joining us, and see you in our next event.